Good morning. Welcome everybody to the MLB Strategy Show / Live Before Lock, because we're going to be talking early slate right from the get-go. I'm Eric Lindquist, excited to be with you talking through 4 games that we have going this morning. 5 games for the main slate this afternoon, 9 baseball games. We will be covering top to bottom, and the guy I'm going to be doing it with, my partner in crime on the Live Before Lock shows all the time. Nice to have him on a morning strategy show alongside me, doing the analyst role. Very excited for Greg Ehrenberg at G Ehrenberg DFS. Go follow him there. How you doing, my dude?
Actually disappointed because I have my Corbin Burns shirt, and I just realized I've been trying to do my laundry in such a way and get my wardrobe set up so that I wear my Corbin Burns shirt every 5 days on Corbin Burns Day, and I'm not wearing it today. I'm wearing a Pokemon shirt, so very disappointing stuff. But I'm pretty exciid for Corbin Burns afternoon.
Is it Blastoise? Is it Charizard?
No. You've seen this one.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Straight up Pikachu. Living the life. That's chill. I was going to say, because Corbin Burns, if it's Blastoise or the most evolved version, Charizard, I would say that either one of them would be Corbin Burns, just a flamethrower.
Yeah, and I mean, we have kind of weird. I wouldn't necessarily. Weird pitching isn't the right way to describe it. We have a lot of different decision points when it comes to pitching and stacks on the early slate. We'll talk about the later slate as well, but I'm kind of curious to hear your takes because I'm really undecided about who I really want to stack right now.
Well, that's the question, because right now there are 2 pitchers that are kind of priorities, and whatever you're trying to do with an SP2, I think is kind of more of the talking point, because stacks where they fall. I mean, there's some uncomfortable decisions here with the early Cincinnati, Arizona. Are we going to avoid weather for the first time in that game? That'll be exciting. Looking forward to it. Hit the like button as we get going. Hit the subscribe button, notification bell as we start breaking it all down for you. We've got lots to get to. Let's just start right from the get-go. Here we go. Arizona Diamondbacks, Cincinnati Reds, 4.6 and 5.4 implied runs here. A massive talking point of the early slate. One of these teams I definitely do want to stack up. Spoiler alert. But Zach Davies, Tyler Mahle. I will say Davies, his peripherals have started to get a lot better. Some of the StatCast metrics, 3.76 expected ERA, overlying metric 1.25 whip, just an 18.4% K percentage. And if you're not named McClanahan and you're not named Burns, you're not a priority on this slate. But we got to find somebody to kind of find some salary savings, play some of the more expensive bats if we want to. How do you feel about about Zach Davies specifically? Is he somebody you might take a plunge with as the lowest owned 1%? We're going on DK. I will probably be over that. How about you?
No, he sucks. And the other thing too is even if you want to say that, hey, his underlying numbers are slightly improved this year, which they are. He has a 4.18 ERA, 3.76 expected ERA. There's no strikeouts there. He's an 18.4% K rate this year with 17.1% last year. He also walks a lot of guys, which is also an issue. 9% walk rate this year, 11.2%. So I don't really buy into his success. And then also, he generally doesn't work deep into games. I understand he went 7 2/3 last time out. It was also a matchup against the Pirates. But look at some of his starts before then. 5 1/3 innings, 3 2/3, 4 innings, 5 2/3. He just doesn't work very deep into games. And when he's on the mound, he doesn't generate strikeouts. So it's hard for me to really see where the upside is for him outside of just he's cheap. If you need salary savings, go for it. But I don't even know we need them. There's not a single pitcher on DraftKings today that's priced over 10K. The most expensive is Corbin Burns at 9,600. It's a pretty reasonable salary. If you go and look over at FanDuel, we do have more expensive pitchers, but you've also got Zach Davies at $7,900 on FanDuel, which there's no need to consider him at that price. So I don't see a need to get to Davies at all.
Mookie Betts, Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman. That would be the reason to be playing Zach Davies.
Well, to me, that's going to be the reason to play Tyler Mahle, who's also somewhat low-owned.
Well, let's jump to the other side of it. Yeah, he's a way better pitcher. Let's not kid ourselves. And probably a better person. Yeah, Zach Davies. I'm going to constantly tell you how horrendous you are. But either way, 24.4% K percentage for Mahle, 3.87 expected ERA, 1.39 whip. Again, just reading off numbers, but Tyler Mahle's always been fantasy viable in the mid-range. He's never expensive. He's never going to be one of those guys that is very prohibitive for you to get some more bats in your life. 6,300, DK.com, 20% ownership, above or below that, Greg?
So Tyler Molly, but let me refresh ownership because I think I'm looking at old numbers now because Molly was a little bit lower than 20% last I checked. So I'm going to refresh and see where we're at now. Tyler Molly, there's so many different slates today. Yeah, so he was 17%. He's up to 19% now. So a little bit of a bump, but still a number for me to be overweight to the field. So you talked about wanting to pay up for potentially some offenses here. And here's where I think a lot of people are going to build their lineups. I think there's generally going to be two types of builds. There's either a lot of them are going to have Burns and McClanahan, and then people just kind of trying to go cheap at offense. The other thing people will do is maybe they'll go to Molly and then either Burns or McClanahan. And then I actually don't even know who people are really paying up for on this slate because the popular offenses, the Reds who are really cheap. There's the Diamondbacks who are really cheap. The Dodgers picking up some ownership. I think that it's probably not going to be all that high. I don't know. I'm just kind of trying to think this slate through in my head. But either way, I'm going to be overweight to Molly. I am in the build I have right now. He's the cheap pitcher that I'm going to be getting behind for this game to pair with the pay up options. The ERA is a little bit deceiving for Molly. It is a 5.43 ERA, but the underlying numbers are significantly better for him. He's just been a victim of unlucky sequencing. The strand rate is only 60.8%. That's going to normalize. If you look at all his other recent years of his career, 77.6% strand rate last year, 75.1% the year before. The league average, I think, has been like 72.5%. That's more or less where we should see Molly. Outside of that, all his numbers look good. He has some command issues from time to time, but that's also been throughout his career. He generates a lot of strikeouts, 24.4%, favorable matchup today. He's my favorite cheap pitching option. Is there a cheap pitching option you like more than him?
Absolutely not. I mean, Michaelis doesn't nearly have the Cape stuff that he's got. I will say Tampa Bay, this ballpark, Artie Van Housen bringing it up. What about the Cardinals against a lefty? Yeah, what about them? I love them against lefties, but not in Tropicana, not going up against Shane McClanahan. Those are two things that are bad. I think there's a bias in my brain because I watched that whole Carlos Rodon meltdown in St. Louis, but it was also like 85 degrees and the ball was flying and he didn't have his best stuff. But either way, I feel pretty uncomfortable with Cardinals Pats, and I think you probably should too. Corbin Burns, definitely going to be the priority for probably you and me. And then everybody else, we're trying to find some kind of exposure to something else. I do have some Tyler Anderson interest. We'll get to him in a little bit, but as it stands right now, if you're trying to fit in some Dodgers, I think he's probably the premier way to do it. But I will say there's some builds I have where Zach Davies is a guy that I'm landing on, even just hand building out some stuff, for single entry purposes and stuff. It feels like if I'm going to full 5-man the Dodgers, depending on how this lineup comes out, the way that we assume it's going to come out, you might need to try to play a share and hope he gets you 10.
By the way, because people in chat are saying that the Reds are expensive, there's a couple individual bats that are expensive that I just don't think are particularly appealing options. And then it's really weird. All the players in the Reds lineup are either crazy overpriced or crazy underpriced. Like they've got TJ Friedel leading off. He's only 2,400. Then you got Brandon Jury, who's 5,400. That's ridiculous. Joey Votto's 4,200. That's cheap. Tommy Pham's 5,500. That's really expensive. Tyler Stevenson, who's been a really good catching fantasy option, is $4,400. That's cheap. Then you got Kyle Farmer's $5,200 for some reason. That's too expensive. But on the whole, I would consider this Reds offense to be inexpensive, with the exception being some random bats that I just don't really care to get to all that much.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's just not a spot that we have to be that concerned about what. Yeah, if you're going to 5-man them out, there's just too many pieces of value to not have it work out. It's just impossible. Friedel is going to be in a massive majority of those lineups, 34%. Colin Moran, 2,400. Against any righty, he's got some utility. I mean, we've seen it in Pittsburgh. We see it here now. Has it been brutal for him before he got hurt, before he was out? Yeah. Or before they recalled him, I suppose. But yeah, it's still a guy that I'll probably click on a little bit. There's enough utility to get to some of those guys. But Arizona, on the other side, you talk about Molly, he's a guy garnering 20% rostership. And, if it's not McClanahan, who's hard to target, and if it's not Burns, who's pretty hard to target, this might be the one pitcher that I'm all right getting to simply because of the ballpark, simply because there are some power bats on the other side. Can we talk about how good Christian Walker is this season? The dude's up to 15 home runs and nobody notices. Those are the things that matter in DFS. And I'm going to get to some of that as a one-off, but anything from Arizona stand out to you?
From an Arizona, I mean, these offenses are so popular. The Reds and the Diamondbacks, the two most popular offenses on the slate. It's a little bit too much ownership for me, but on a smaller slate, it's hard to avoid these teams entirely. But my preference is to be underweight to both the Reds and the Diamondbacks, and then get overweight to a team like the Dodgers, who we talked about before. As one-offs, it is going to be hard to avoid some of the really cheap Reds bats, kind of like a Friedel, but I'm pretty high on Tyler Mahle for this slate, and the Diamondbacks are one of the teams I'm going to be pretty underweight to.
All right. Well, anything else from this game for you then?
No, not really. When you said you have some interest in Davies, how much do you envision you'll get to him?
I have 4%, and I'm probably going to go up from there.
All right. So it's not like crazy or anything.
No, but I'm saying that there's 8 pitchers available, and if you're going to full on stack the Dodgers with Burns, which McClanahan, you can do it. It's pretty simple. But if I'm going to get up to Burns and have that kind of a build and go 9,600, 5,500, I just need the price. He's 800 less than Davies. And if Mahle dies, Zach Eflin, anybody else on the cheap end, would it surprise you if Davies, who averages 11.4 DraftKings points per game, going up against Mahle, who averages 12.3, against Eflin, who's 14.8, Miles Michaelis, 15.9. We're talking a spread of 4 fantasy points, and I get it. Davies sucks. He's terrible. But on 4-game slates, I think it gets a little bit overblown when you have a guy who can just legitimately get 10, 12 and give you a completely different build where I can get a 5-man Dodger stack with Burns. I think that there's some utility there.
So, I mean, the only thing that I would say against that is I've built my lineups, and it wasn't that difficult to have Burns and McClanahan as the pitchers in Dodger stacks.
Not with the core 3.
Let's see. So what did who else came up? Also, we just had the Dodgers lineup, and that wasn't out.
I didn't see it.
So the Dodgers lineup: Betts, Freeman, Turner, Muncy is back, Will Smith, Justin Turner, Bellinger, Lux, and Barnes at catcher. I'm gonna have to rerun my lineups anyway because a lot of my lineups have Will Smith in them.
Will Smith is DHing.
Oh, never mind. All right, so we're good. I just saw Barnes at catcher. I was like, I guess Will Smith.
I'm pretty sure I heard you say Will Smith in there, and I think he's DHing today.
Yeah. Never mind. I did say that. So it was just Muncy back in the lineup off the injured list. Muncy was so bad before. I mean, we'll talk about the game in a second, but anyway, that's what the Dodgers lineup is. So one thing that is going to change a little bit for me is that I had Zach McKinstry was currently expected to be in the lineup, at least in our projections, but with Muncy back, he's going to be taken out. And that was a min price bat that was easy to fit into stacks.
Burns, McClanahan, Will Smith, Freeman, Muncy, Turner, Betts. You don't even get close to being able to fit that. 1,766. So it's going to be a spot where if you want to be targeting them against Dylan Cease, and I do think Dylan Cease will be deceased today with the Dodgers, hopefully. That'd be great. I don't know why I do puns like that. They're not funny, but here we go. We will get to ways to get to that done. And I think Zach Davies, I hate the man. He's terrible at pitching, but he's 1%. We continue on. St. Louis Cardinals, 3 implied runs going up against Tampa Bay, 4. Why is it so low? Well, Shane McClanahan's on the mound for Tampa Bay. 36% K percentage is absurd. It's ridiculous. I understand. Everything I said about St. Louis before still holds true against left-handed pitching. They're monsters. 122 WRC plus. The ISOs come down to around 156. It was north of the 200 mark about a week ago. So, just when you do these shows every single day, these are things you notice haven't been as good. And Shane McClanahan is really good. The ballpark is really good for pitching. He's kind of a can't miss option, but how much do you want to roster him today, Greg?
I mean, I'm underweight to him in the current build I have. I don't agree that he's can't miss just because Corbin Burns is available also at a somewhat comparable price point. And this is a team in the Cardinals. You mentioned it's a really good offense against left-handed pitching. They're 3rd in baseball with a 122 WRC plus against southpaws. They also rarely strike out against lefties. This is a team that, and against righties, it's not nearly as good as an offense as it against left-handed pitching, but they still just don't swing and miss a whole bunch. So I know that Shane McClanahan has been one of the best strikeout pitchers in baseball this year, probably the best left-handed strikeout starter that we have in all of baseball. But when the Cardinals are only striking out an 18.3% clip, and they also draw walks at a fairly high clip against left-handed pitching, I do get concerns that McClanahan is just going to have his pitch count worked up fairly high in this game and isn't going to be able to work super deep into it. And he could struggle to generate strikeouts. So one talking point I think is important for the early slate is Shane McClanahan versus Corbin Burnes. They're both going to be popular. And I lean towards Corbin Burnes pretty heavily right now in our ownership projections. Burnes is projected for 64% ownership. McClanahan is projected for 57% on DK. Over on FanDuel, 43% for Burnes, 25% for McClanahan. I think that gap, at least on DraftKings, should be a little bit wider. FanDuel, it's kind of more appropriate.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Corbin Burnes is routinely, we've been doing this for a year and a half together. Seems like he's been a talking point for you and I a couple times, and he's the best pitcher in baseball. So, yeah, I have nothing to add there. Shane McClanahan, though, no doubt that I'm going to get to a lot of shares of him on DK today. If you're making a handful of lineups, I do find him to be can't miss. I will say the word can't miss on a guy with a 36% K percentage who's just phenomenal in a great ballpark, great home ballpark. I can't get away from playing a lot of that, but one for one, I'm with you. Corbin Burnes still going to be the priority, if probably by a slimmer margin for me than for you.
Relative to the ownership on McClanahan, are you going to be over or underweight to him? Because in the build I just have less, but he's my second most rostered pitcher on the slate. I just don't get him in 60% of my lineups.
Yeah, I capped him at 50 because I don't know a better way to do it on a show as lineups are coming out and I'm adjusting for the Dodgers. And we'll see if I can, or if I have to get to more McClanahan as opposed to Burnes, depending on this Dodgers situation, because that is the team that I'm prioritizing today. You get a 4-game slate and you get one of the best, if not the best offense in baseball. We want to be rostering them. We want to get to that team and pitching, if Corbin Burnes and Shane McClanahan both go for 35, and then you have to play the cheap bats from Cincy and Arizona, I just am not going to win this slate. And so it is what it is. I want to be picking one of the two, and I'm with you where I think Corbin Burnes still the guy that I want to be over the field on, even at higher ownership. We'll see, though. I might need some of the salary. Even that $900 difference on DK might be enough where I have to get to more of him. I'm still finishing everything up here. But on the other side of this one, Miles Mikolas, and talking point, anytime there's only 8 pitchers, he's going to be somebody who shows up in the top 2 percentage. He's fourth. He's behind Cease, McClanahan, Burnes for DK purposes. He's about appropriately on 24.8% ownership. It's a great matchup going in Tropicana. These are things that you can get done. Strikeouts to be had up and down this lineup. Only 3 bats that strike out at less than a 24% clip in this iteration of it. That's Brujan, Margot, and Diaz. How do you feel about Mikolas and shares of him today?
Yeah, so I think the talking point when it comes to Mikolas at least when we're talking about how do we want to allocate exposure on a slate of this size, he's definitely worth getting to, but I strongly prefer Tyler Mahle, who I think is better, has more strikeout upside, has an easier matchup, is cheaper, and is lower owned. Like, I don't understand how more people are clicking on Mikolas than they are on Mahle. I understand that he's had a good amount of success this year, but the last couple of years, he hasn't been particularly good. He's still not a high strikeout guy. I definitely don't think he has the strikeout upside that Mahle has. Only an 18.9% strikeout rate for Mikolas. And while he does have a 3.02 ERA, he's also been buoyed by some good luck. He has a 3.61 expected ERA, 3.6 FIP. Those are by no means bad numbers, but I would just expect him to be worse going forward. Both Zips and Steamer have him projected as a guy north of 4 ERA for the rest of the season. And once again, it's hard for me to really see the upside when he has an 18.9% strikeout rate. By the way, that's the highest of his career. It's still very low. So I don't like him nearly as much as the field does, especially when I could get Mahle for cheaper and less ownership.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson, I think, will be a guy I try to make work. We're going to do that. But yeah, I'm with you. I think Mikolas, it's a great matchup. And as I said before, there's a ton of strikeouts. When you add Brett Phillips, every time I see him added to a lineup, alerts go off in my brain saying roster the pitcher on the other side. But I will say this is not probably the guy to do it with when he's sub 19% K percentage. He's a good real life pitcher. And that kind of leads us into offenses. I don't get a whole lot from this game. It's only 8 games to pluck from, or 8 teams to pluck from, but I definitely don't want to be trying to get to a whole lot against McClanahan, even with all of the talent we see as far as up and down the lineup, absolute lefty killers in the likes of Goldschmidt, Arenado, Pujols, once upon a time, maybe more so, but still a 403 expected slugging this season. Anything whatsoever for offense in this game?
Let's see. So the offenses here, current data we have on them, the Tampa Bay Rays. If I'm going to be light on Michaelis, I guess I can make a case for getting to Tampa Bay. I think there's leverage to be had in the Cardinals offense, though. They're the lowest owned offense on the entire slate, kind of comparable to the Philadelphia Phillies. But the Cardinals have been so good against left-handed pitching, like we said before. It's not a high priority offense in terms of if you're playing one or two lineups. I wouldn't really be considering the Cardinals. But if somebody who plays 150 lineups, I would definitely want to be overweight to the Cardinals. There's a ton of ownership going to McClanahan. I'm underweight to McClanahan. I'm overweight to Burns. So I kind of like the Cardinals just for leverage purposes.
I love the Cardinals against lefties. It's just so hard for me to envision this is the spot. Plus, it's not like you're getting discounts on a couple of these guys. I mean, you don't get a McClanahan discount the way that, remember when Walker Buehler got everybody on the Braves priced below 4K and you had just this weird talking point? Well, Arenado's still 4,600. Goldschmidt is 5,700 on DK. I mean, it's really a result of the fact that DK doesn't change these pricings on these short slates. I think my favorite guy to probably get to would be Tyler O'Neill. We know there's a massive amount of power. Even if he was struggling at the beginning of this season with strikeouts, gets back in action here the last two games. Went yard yesterday, I believe. Yeah, he did. Cool. But just a lot of power that we saw last year. Pretty disappointing if you bet him. There are a lot of people with tickets floating around for him to lead the league in home runs this season. That's just a massive bat here to add to the fray. So yeah, you got Yepez, O'Neill, Bader. Generally speaking, I would want all of these guys going up against lefties, but I just can't do it as much with McClanahan. I understand that, you know, it's a team with some positive leverage, a team that has no attention going there. So maybe get to a couple, but I'll probably be making stands elsewhere. As far as Tampa Bay goes, any batter that specifically stands out to you?
Let's see. Tampa Bay lineups. Who did I end up getting to? And this also, if I'm stacking one side of this game, I do prefer the Cardinal side to the Rays side. But individual hitters, Kevin Kiermaier pops up for me as a value play, really cheap batting leadoff. Brett Phillips is in some of my lineups, just really low owned in the middle of the lineup. Also really cheap, although he's been fairly miserable at the plate this year. But there's nobody that really pops up meaningfully. It's a lot of guys that are like 5 to 10% of lineups.
All right. Anything else from this game?
Not for me.
All right. Beautiful. Well, we've got MLB Strategy Show. Hey, everybody. We have the best tools and content in the industry. I think you already know that. Check out our free MLB player projections today. By the way, multiple slates, multiple times to make money, and we're here to help you do that. But the most important thing you can do right now for yourself at this moment is getting yourself 50% off a first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. I get it. It can be a full freight when you're paying for a full month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, especially if you haven't become acquainted with some of the tools and content. But you know, if you've ever had it before, that these tools pay for themselves. And it doesn't matter if you're a first-time user. It doesn't matter if you're somebody who's routinely signed up. Anytime there's promotions here at Awesemo, this works for all of you. It is promo code MLB Strategy Show, all caps, one word. Save 50% off that first month of Awesemo Plus Platinum, and not just the MLB that you know and love for the top stacks tool, the top batters tool, the new edition, which is so cool. Sean's on spearheading that. He keeps winning 100K a night. Pretty cool stuff. But if you want to have the best tools and content in MLB, take advantage of this. But you also get NBA Finals Showdown coverage. You get soccer. You get NASCAR. You get MMA, you get golf, you get everything we have behind the paywall. Top golfers tool, top drivers tool. It never ends. The amount of opportunities you guys have to win money here at Awesemo. So use promo code MLB Strategy Show, all caps, one word. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Awesemo Plus today. All right, my friends, we continue on. 2 more games to cover on this early slate. Then we will talk some main slate. We'll recap possibly at the end as both Greg and myself get our lineups in. This Dodgers situation is just bonkers. Let's get to it, shall we? We've got 4.4 implied runs here for them in Chicago, 4.1 implied runs on the other side for the White Sox. Tyler Anderson, 24.2% K percentage. That's serviceable. That's the likes of Tyler Mahle. What's not the likes of Tyler Mahle is the fact that you got to pay $8,100 for him as opposed to $6,300 for Mahle. But That, of course, suppresses ownership. And I am all about trying to find somebody, anybody that can be successful. And this White Sox team is absolute garbage. Day in, day out, I find myself targeting them. Still, though, a 133 WRC plus. They are lefty killers top to bottom, usually, but this iteration of the lineup with Mendick leading off, with Jake Berger in it, with Luis Robert being the one bat that I'm really actually nervous about, Jose Abreu, maybe he'll positively regress. He's continuing to be just Jose Abreu. He would be good, but like, I find myself getting to Tyler Anderson as my pivot. Is he somebody who interests you at all today?
Yeah. I mean, once again, there's only two pitchers that are really low owned today. I guess we could consider Cease in the mix as well. So we'll say three low owned pitchers on the early slate. We've got Dylan Cease against the Dodgers. That obviously comes with some concerns. We've got Zach Davies against the Reds. I don't think Zach Davies is any good. And they've got Tyler Anderson against the White Sox. It is a tough matchup because the White Sox have been far better against left-handed pitching than right-handed pitching this year. But in just the interest of trying to differentiate a pitcher in some way, he's 5% owned on DraftKings, on, a small slate over on FanDuel. FanDuel, it's kind of hard to consider him because he's priced all the way up to $9,600, but 2% owned. I think he could be a little bit higher owned than that. So $8,100 is an SP2 on DraftKings. I think we could do worse when he's only 5% owned. If he was even 10% or more than that, I probably wouldn't really have that much interest. But at 5%, I think this is a reasonable way to differentiate lineups.
I'm with you. It has to be done. It must be done. It's the only way that I can really find to get different a little bit at pitcher. It doesn't feel good to have to be paying the full freight for it, but I feel like that has to be the guy that can compete with the likes of everybody else below him. If he beats everybody else below him, you're in really good shape. If he doesn't, you're probably not, but still, you need to get your stack right. And that is the utility of going down to him as opposed to playing Burns and McClanahan. Saving a little bit of money can go a long way today. We'll see. It's going to be an uncomfortable slate, but this is a fun slate on the other side because Dylan Cease, 32.5% K percentage, really good underlying metric, 2.79 expected ERA, but yet a 1.29 whip. And I feel like he's a guy who's gotten himself into trouble in a couple of spots where I thought he was going to have massive performances because of the strikeouts, but they've started to regress off a little bit. And 4 strikeouts against Boston got completely torched up. We only saw, 5 strikeouts the last 2. I haven't seen as many of these massive performances, but this Dodgers team, this Dodgers iteration, getting Max Muncy back, that is strikeouts to be had here. He's had a rough season here. 22% K percentage is better than what you might be expecting from Muncy in years past where, let's see, because I know he had 20.3% last season. Yeah, it's a tough bat, though, to add into the fray. I just think people might shy away from him more than what we're projecting. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but 12.1% ownership, I have to be over that. There's no way that I won't be, even against the Dodgers. Are you?
Yeah, so here's the thing with Max Muncy is, do you think that Max Muncy went on the disabled list or the injured list because he was struggling, or do you think he was struggling because he was hurt?
Chicken or the egg, or the egg or the chicken, or the chicken?
You know what I mean, though? Because we've seen the Dodgers do this a lot over the years where if pitchers get a little bit fatigued, they'll throw them on the injured list. They'll let them get some bullpen work in, take a couple of weeks off, kind of build their arm strength back up. And I think there's a chance also that Muncy may have just been struggling so much because he was playing hurt. And if that's the case and he's healthy now, I would expect him to be the same guy was the last couple of years. Just the fact that he's so low owned, I think he makes sense in the middle of the Dodgers lineup. If the Dodgers were really concerned about his performance, this is kind of one other narrative. Would they hit him in the middle of the order, or would they start by having Muncy come back and hit like 8th or 9th? I think the fact that he's in the middle of the order is probably an indication they feel pretty good about him. And as for Dylan Cease, overall, his numbers are really good this year. His control in recent games is a little concerning. His last 2 starts, he's walked 11 hitters. He's had multiple walks in all but 1 start this year. He obviously has really good stuff and really good strikeout stuff, but you also mentioned the strikeout rate has dipped. He has, in his last 3 starts, 14 strikeouts for Dylan Cease compared to 13 walks. That's concerning to me. And I think that he's maybe a little bit off mechanically right now. This is not the greatest team in the Dodgers to have to try to kind of figure that out on the fly against. So the Dodgers are my highest owned offense right now. Same. I think this game makes sense to play both sides, though, of just because Cease is so low owned. I think he's a serviceable pivot off of guys like Burns and McClanahan, but my lean is towards the Dodgers offense.
It's an absolute scum Dacker situation. Shout out our boy Gun Dacker, but I'm with you. I see Philadelphia, positive leverage. St. Louis, positive leverage. You know what they have in common? They're facing aces. And Dylan Cease, despite the K percentage, I want to be over that, but there's no way that the Dodgers aren't going to be my highest owned offense. When you're looking at a 16.2% ownership share and everybody's rostering Arizona and Cincinnati, question mark? Like for me, I have to get to the Dodgers. And that was the priority from day one. From day one, we literally played baseball for a day here. I mean, it's DFS, but I absolutely need to get to this team above expectation. I think Muncy, you bring up a lot of great points there. The other reason that they probably felt comfortable having Muncy be out, though, was Edwin Rios became God, and they didn't really lose anything in the middle of the order. They basically took Rios and put in 2021 Muncy, and they were set to go. Now with Edwin Rios on the IL, has the calf strain, I believe it was something. He did a weird thing running to first base, and it was a strange situation. But that's my Lord and Savior, Edwin Rios. And now Muncy back in the fray. Hopefully he's right, and hopefully we can be early to the party, batting cleanup here today. But talk to me about the Dodgers, because they are just unavoidable for tournaments for me.
Yeah, I mean, there's it's really hard to find positive leverage at offense today where you're being reasonable, because like from a projection standpoint, I understand why a team like the Phillies ends up being positively leveraged against Corbin Burns, but I don't really want to stack against Corbin Burns all that much, because I think there's points and times to stack against chalky pitchers. It's not the best pitchers in baseball that I want to stack against in most cases. So then I started to look at some of these other teams. It's like, all right, well, the Reds are negatively leveraged. The Diamondbacks are over-owned as well. And then you have the Dodgers, who are pretty clearly the best offense on this slate and are under-owned against a pitcher that's struggling a little bit lately. So as much as I think Dylan Cease is one of the most talented pitchers in baseball, I don't think he's as good of a pitcher as the Dodgers are as an offense. So that's kind of where I land with getting most of my exposure.
All right, well, that's great. Any batter that you're specifically getting to the most? For me, you're looking at the shortstop position, and I think a lot of people might try to. I don't want to speculate. Just look at the projections. I mean, it's Trey Turner, 23.6%. He's the highest owned at the position, but there's a reason for it, because he's competing against, let me list some all-stars, okay? Danny Mendick, Kyle Farmer. Those are the guys who are popular. Matt Reynolds in Cincinnati. I mean, we're talking about a dude in Trey Turner that if he's still going to be sub 25% amongst these guys, I need to have more than that.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, he's kind of unavoidable. The other guys too, though, is if you go later into the lineup, you're getting some really lower owned guys. Cody Bellinger, Gavin Lux. We talk about Max Muncy. I don't think Max Muncy is going to be all that popular in the middle of the lineup. You and I just hit on that point before, but I think he's somebody that makes sense to be overweight too. It's fairly easy to make contrarian Dodger stacks.
I'm with you. White Sox on the other side. I did talk about it because not something you would expect. Chicago against the split, against right-handed pitching, 79 WRC plus, a 105 ISO. Against lefties, we're talking about a 133 WRC plus, a 192 ISO. But my God, I look at this lineup and I ask how are they possibly going to get after it today compared to the Dodgers on the other side? A 4 implied total maybe makes it a little less I shouldn't be this apprehensive of trying to get to some White Sox bats, but I'm definitely more on the Anderson side. Are you planning to roster any White Sox?
Individually, yeah, I think, Danny Mendick leading off, he's cheap. That's sensible. Jose Abreu hits left-handed pitching really well, so he makes sense to get exposure to. But I am more inclined to get to the Tyler Anderson side of this game. So there isn't any one hitter on the White Sox that I'm, crazy exposed to. If you need a cheap punt hitter, Adam Engel is min price on DK and hits towards the end of the lineup. Is he going to produce a lot? Most likely, no, not. But whenever there's somebody who's cheap that's starting on a 4-game slate, I kind of end up with them in my lineup. So Adam Engel, Josh Harrison, those guys get exposure. Somebody in chat wants to know, Eric, are you going to call for a leadoff homer for Danny Mendick today?
No, I'm not.
You don't like Mendick?
No. It's got
All
Dick
right.
in the name.
Yeah. I know. By the way, I feel like a 5-year-old. That name will never not be funny to me.
Danny Mendick.
It's an awful name.
Banana.
His name is Mendick. Like, how did high school, middle school go for him? Probably not that great.
Yeah, he's in the major leagues of baseball. I think his life is okay. I think it's all right that we poke fun at him in this morning where we are comfortable in our seats, not doing any hard, strenuous labor. I'm clicking buttons. My hand kind of hurts, but that's about it.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. There's nothing else to say. One more game to go to, fam. Let's do the thing. Let's do the damn thing. And let's talk Corbin Burnes. Ya boy. I believe you have a house, and Corbin Burnes is partially responsible. Philadelphia Phillies, 3.3 implied runs at Milwaukee, 4.2. Zach Eflin, Corbin Burnes. But we start with Burnes because feel the Burnes. It's time, Mr. Burnes, if you will. A lot of puns, a lot of jokes all wrapped in one. Let that sit on you a little bit, but he's the best pitcher in baseball. We want to roster him, don't we, Greg?
Yeah, he is excellent. So when it comes to Corbin Burnes, I think he's the best pitcher in baseball. He hasn't been as good this year as he was last year, but I mean, last year was one of the best seasons we've ever seen a pitcher put up. So it was going to be hard to replicate that. But I mean, still a 2.5 ERA, a 3 expected ERA. He's a 31.3% strikeout rate. He's actually walking less guys than he did last year, not by much, but he has cut his walk rate from 5.2% to 4.9%. Back in the day, that was the only thing that prevented Corbin Burnes from being an elite starting pitcher, was he had struggles with walks at times. Not a concern anymore. He's pitching really well this year. Philly's offense is good. I don't even think it matters when Corbin Burnes is on the mound. So Burnes is my most rostered pitcher on this slate. I strongly prefer him to Shane McClanahan.
Strongly, again, the word strongly, and I love Corbin Burnes, but we're talking about a 4.5% K percentage difference. We're talking, two potent offenses, St. Louis against lefties and for sure Philadelphia against righties. So I think it's kind of all out in the wash. I slightly prefer Corbin Burnes, but you strongly prefer Corbin Burnes.
I have about double the exposure to Burnes that I do to McClanahan.
Yeah, I can't blame you. He's treated you well in your life. Maybe we should all come along for the ride. But Zach Eflin, this is kind of the guy who gets discarded by me. He's got 17.3% ownership going his direction, but I just find it pretty unappealing to want to pick on him against Milwaukee here. Also, he's a decent enough real-life pitcher, 2.51 expected ERA here this season, 1.14 whip. But Milwaukee's another team that I'm trying to sprinkle in where I think they have some power speed combo. They've got even in the back half of this lineup, some cheaper outfielders, McCutchen, Renfroe, guys that are sub 4K. Rowdy Tellez is 3,500. He should never be 3,500. One of my favorite first basemen of the day. How do you feel about Zach Eflin on today's slate?
So I don't think this is a particularly good spot for Eflin. The Brewers offense has been really good against right-handed pitching, second in ISO against righties this year. And another thing too, is we have other pitchers that are similarly priced and lesser owned. Well, at least one anyway, Tyler Mahle. I'd rather play Mahle for $400 less at 19% ownership as compared to the 17% ownership for Eflin. I think that's much more favorable for him against the Diamondbacks versus we're getting from Eflin against the Brewers.
Yeah, shout out. Why is Chase Peterson so high on my board today? What is wrong with me? Is Chase Peterson good again? What am I looking at? Okay, 432 expected slugging. That's not, I had it listed at 532. That was a cross sheet issue. There you go. Awesome. Talking to myself, nobody cares. Philadelphia Phillies offense, you could roster Schwarber, you could roster Harper. I just probably don't want to today against Corbin Burnes with as much as I have, but it's just a 4-game slate. Do you have any shares of these Philly power bets?
Some shares just for leverage purposes because Corbin Burnes is in 80% of my lineups. And I think it makes sense to have some shares of the Phillies, especially because it's such a small slate. It's only 4 games to choose from. But I'm not quite in line with the top stacks tool. I usually use that to build my lineups, pretty heavily. We have the Phillies as the number 1 leverage stack on the slate. I can't get behind them in that kind of way. I just have a couple shares of them.
All right, I guess I am going to play some Jace Peterson. 5 homers all against righties. Here we go. Go team. Go team. Milwaukee, Jace Peterson, Rowdy Tellez, Christian Yelich. Give me all the lefties here. Give me some Hunter Renfroe in the back half of that order. Power all the time. Yes, a little bit better, obviously, up against righties, or against lefties. But Victor Caratini, switch hitting catcher. That's a guy I'm finding some leeway to get to. Anybody else from Milwaukee that stands out to you? Is it a team you're stacking up?
I think they make some sense against Zach Eflin for sure. There's so much power in the Brewers offense, so kind of unavoidable once again on a 4-game slate. But to me, the team I really want to be overweight to is the Dodgers. and the Brewers are an offense I'm not that much different than the field on. One thing that actually did lower my exposure to them is Colton Wong, who's been injured lately. I had him as my most rostered second baseman. Him not being in the lineup when that officially came out, that lowered the amount that I was getting to the Brewers.
All right. Anything else from this game? Anything else from the early slate before we turn it over to the main slate here?
No, I think we should move on to the main slate.
All right. And we will fly through it, my friends, because we want to just make sure you have all your lineups in. We'll maybe be 5 minutes over, but I know how much Tyler Xander loves to go over on shows. So I didn't want to disappoint him. Tyler Xander behind the virtual glass. We're going to be out at lot. Cool. We're going to be flying. PrizePicks, y'all, though. They are the sponsor. They deserve some time. We love PrizePicks. I love PrizePicks. I'm definitely having a lot of fun over there here of late. Doing a lot of VODs over at the Odd Chopper channel. Go give that a like, a subscribe, do all of those good things, and then check out my video for my 3 picks for today. But PrizePicks, get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you deposit. You can get the $100 first match deposit using promo code Awesemo, but also 1 free month, everything we have behind the paywall. I love the MLB Strategy Show promo, 50% off, awesome. But if you're already a member of PrizePicks, that's what you're going to use. But if you're not, get this free month signing up over at PrizePicks right now. Take advantage of it, up to $100 deposited straight into your account. I'm looking forward to playing the over on Corbin. Corbin Burns is 7.5 strikeouts. That's a pretty large number, but Justin Turner, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, and Trey Turner all together, total home runs. I get 4. I never see 4 together. I'm absolutely playing the over of that over on PrizePicks today for the early slate. Won't be able to be in the video because obviously it starts at 11:10, but the fact that there are 4 available to me there, that is too good to be true. Do you concur, Greg? Anything else for PrizePicks that stands out to you?
No, I haven't had a chance to look at it yet, but I know that you have your videos you record to it. So not at the moment.
All right. Well, we move on. PrizePicks, they're the best. Promo code Awesemo, $100 first match deposit bonus. If you're in a legal state, if you're in a state that, still has PrizePicks, awesome. Good on you. But people in California like me, this is what we rely on for our props. So thank you so much to them, PrizePicks, for being the sponsor of not just the MLB Strategy Show, but all the other great shows we have here on the Awesemo channel. So many different shows that they sponsor, and we love them so. All right, main slate time, y'all. We're going to get through this one pretty quickly. Pretty quickly is probably the right way of putting it. Sorry, my voice did a weird thing there. But we start Oakland, Cleveland. That is what we have. Caprillion. I don't know how people tolerate me. Connor Pilkington.
No. I'm interrupting the show right now.
No, Tyler, I don't have time for this.
Connor
Pilkington. I'm sure it's important.
29.1% K percentage for this dude through a couple starts. That's interesting. Connor Pilkington on the other side. How do pitchers look for you in this game?
Yeah, so starting with James, Caprillion was really good last year, and he's fallen off a cliff this year. And just kind of across the board, the numbers don't look particularly great for him. 6.06 ERA, 5.45 expected ERA. He's not generating strikeouts at all anymore, 15.6%. So there's a spot where I think last year we would have seen Caprillion at this cheap of a price point and really wanted to roster him. Now that is just not the case for me anymore. I get he's really cheap. I still just can't have interest.
Yeah, I can't have interest here either. It's just not going to happen. He's the poor soul, James Caprillion. I feel bad for him. But Connor Pilkington, can we get some Pilkington love up in here? Because Oakland, I don't know if you've heard this, they're horrendous.
They are certainly not good. And Pilkington's kind of had some okay strikeout starts. Actually, better than okay. He's a 29.1% K rate. His minor league numbers were not good this year, and he only had a 17.5% K rate. We look at some of his previous numbers when it comes to strikeout rates in the minor leagues. He was north of 30%. Given how bad the Oakland A's offense is, I think it really does make sense there.
All right. Well, that kind of makes it easy. I don't have a lot of Oakland interest anytime they're facing somebody that is an elite, or I roster Oakland just as a pure leverage thing more than I probably should is the right way of saying it. But then, going up against Pilkington, I can't imagine that they're going to be all that popular. Looking at the top stacks tool, there's positive leverage going there. 7.4% top stack percentage, middle of the road here on this slate. 9.6% ownership share seems high, but it seems like there must be some value there considering they have a stack score of 11.3. That's third best behind Baltimore and the Yankees, of course. But Oakland might be a team you roster today. Do you concur?
No, No. I mean, I think right now they're going a little bit over-owned. I mean, they're projected for 9.6% ownership. That's a lot for a shitty Oakland team. I know that they're really cheap, so they're popping up as a value offense. But at the same time, too, I don't really feel the need that I need to save that much at offense today because we have Garrett Cole to pay up for. And then the next most expensive pitcher, there's Max Fried at 9,500. There isn't like a ton of pitching to pay up for. I don't think I need the value as much on this slate as I have on some other slates.
Oh, God. So bad news everywhere. First of all, I apologize. It's June 9th. I finally said the word that I wasn't supposed to. Guardians. Come on, Eric. First time.
I had to re-record a video yesterday because I realized I did that after the fact.
See, that's not fun. But also not fun to name your team the Indians if they don't want that. But that's a different conversation. Indians on the other side, 4.9 implied runs going up against Caprillion. Not good.
You just did it again, by the way.
Oh, God. See, now it's in my head. This sucks. Tyler's dead. I'm dead. I'm done. The Guardians of the Galaxy on the other end. Whatever, just talk about them because I think they definitely are going to be popular. I want to play J Ram like everybody else. I want to play some of these lefties, Josh Naylor, whatever. Just talk.
Yeah. I mean, they're really, really popular, which is the only issue. So it's a team to get to if you're just thinking about like, okay, which teams are facing bad pitchers. I talked about how bad Caprilion's been this year, but there's a breaking point, and they're going to be 15% owned with a 12% chance to be a top stack. So it's a team I want to be underweight to. Long-term, I do not think this is going to be a good offense this year outside of Jose Ramirez. Steven Kwan got off to a really good start this year, but he's kind of cooled off. It's been a massively disappointing year for somebody like Framil Reyes, who's been a top power hitter in previous years. So as a one-off, sure, Jose Ramirez makes sense. He's also going to be really popular, so I expect I'm going to ultimately come in underweight to him as well. There's just other offenses I like more relative to ownership on this slate.
All right. Anything else from this one?
No.
We make our way to Pittsburgh, Atlanta, 3.1 for Pittsburgh. Atlanta Braves on the other side, 5.4. JT Brubaker, and I got to say, 5.4 implied runs. How dare they besmirch the good name of JT Brubaker, who I absolutely love. Oh, yeah, it's 80 degrees and the wind's blowing out. But other than that, and Atlanta's very good. But other than that, JT Brubaker is just a pitcher that I think is a pretty serviceable dude. Hasn't been as good this season. 1.45 whip is not enticing, but 22.5% K percentage, small slate. We have one massive ace at the top end. We have a couple of guys that are just way undervalued. Hey, looking at you, Shohei. But if it's not going to be Cole, Fried, or Ohtani, you got to find other leverage pieces. And God, JT Brubaker, 10.6% leverage. That seems enticing. Is he going to be a pitcher you want to roster at all today?
Yeah, a little bit. In large field GPPs, obviously not a cash game play, not a consideration like single entry or small field tournaments. But JT Brubaker has strikeout upside, and I feel like we were almost going to see it last start. He got off to a really good outing. I think he was pitching against the Diamondbacks. He was low owned. He started well, and I was saying like, okay, this is going to be a good Brubaker start. And then he just got his ass kicked in like the third or fourth inning in that start. But he has a 22.5% strikeout rate this year, 24% last year. The underlying numbers are better than the actual metrics. Another guy who's just been a victim of a really low strand rate, 63.8%. That's going to normalize somewhere around 70% or so. And then he's going to look much better in terms of a run allowance perspective. The matchup isn't ideal, but it's just the 3% ownership. I think he should be higher owned than that. We have him projected with a 14.4% chance to be a top two pitcher tonight. So if we're looking for a contrarian pitcher on a smaller slate, I think Brubaker makes sense because there aren't that many other guys we could look to. Actually, there's nobody else we could really look to for leverage for cheap, in my opinion.
I probably agree with you there. We look at Max Fried on the other side. We know that curveball can be something that induces a lot of whiffs. 40.7% on the other side here. He's going to be popular. He's freed. Max Fried has freed himself from his walk problems. 4.3% walk rate coming out of the bigs, 2018, 14.1%. And he has just continually gotten better in that department. I think really kind of volatile. I don't see any reason that I'm going to stack up Pittsburgh on the other side of this one, but Max Fried, is he going to be a pitcher you want to be above or below the field on? I mean, I know it's 9:22 a.m. out here on the West Coast, but still, the people need to know.
So we have three pitchers at the top end that are comparably owned today. Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Shohei Ohtani. Of the three, Fried is my least favorite, and that's not to say he's a bad option. It's just more so that I don't think he's the same strikeout upside that a Garrett Cole or a Shohei Ohtani has. And as evidence of this, his strikeout prop is, I think it was 4.5 at open today, maybe 5.5. It was something really low. And it's a number you just wouldn't see on somebody like a Garrett Cole, for instance, who's only marginally more expensive. Yeah. 5.5 strikeout prop for Max Fried. I do think the over makes sense, but still there's so much more strikeout upside in Ohtani and Garrett Cole than there is for Max Fried that I prefer to get to those guys than I do to Fried.
Yes, there for damn sure is. I still don't want to roster Pittsburgh. Do you?
No.
Okay, cool. So Atlanta on the other side is where we jump to. And Acuna Matata, not a wonderful phrase when your team puts up 13 runs and you can't hit the over of 1.5 total bases. Yeah, I'm upset. I'm bitter. I'm not okay. We're not going to sing. What is that? My Chemical Romance. I'm going to hold back the urge, but we definitely will not hold back the urge to roster some of these Atlanta Braves. Yeah, they're going to be popular. Yeah, they've got a huge implied total, but I still think we want to get to them. How do you feel about the Braves today?
So when it comes to the Braves, I just mentioned I do think Brubaker is a little bit underrated. But at the same time, too, it's kind of weird. The field isn't really playing Brubaker that much. They're not playing the Braves. The Braves 11% ownership, 15% chance to be a top stack. So this is one of the spots that on the night slate, there's two spots I like playing both sides of. This is one of them. The other one is going to be the Ohtani Red Sox spot that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, JT Brubaker, we have seen him hit hard at times this year. And even in the past, he's always been a high home run to fly ball pitcher, a home run to fly ball rate pitcher. He had a 22.4% home run fly ball rate last year. So when he is not pitching well, he gets it really hard and he allows long balls. So I do think he's somebody who there's upside in picking on him. He's only 3% owned. My preference is to play like 10% of Brubaker. Then we've got 11% ownership going to the Braves. My preference is probably to play somewhere there were like 15 to 17% of them. So I'm going to be overweight to both sides.
Anything else from this one?
Nope, that does it for me.
All right. Happy birthday, Margie. We continue on. The shout out to my friend in chat. Well, she's watching either way. Garrett Cole, 31.5% K percentage going up against the Minnesota Twins. That's why they've got a 3.3 implied run total. And here's the thing. Is there going to be a home road split where maybe umpires are a little bit more cracking down on Garrett Cole, wiping his backside in order to get whatever this sticky stuff is that he's pitching with, because he's definitely improved as a result of it. Since we've been tuning into that, the results have just continually gotten better and better as this season has progressed. I think obviously he's getting away with something, but you know what? Such is life. I think he's unavoidable today. Yes, the word is unavoidable. 10-4. You're paying the full freight for it, but he is by far the best pitching option. If you're in cash, he's unavoidable in that construct. How much Garrett Cole do you anticipate getting against the Twins in Target Field?
Yeah, he's my favorite pitcher to roster on the slate. And is it weird to you that he's the least owned of the three pay up options?
Yeah, it is, but that's kind of a testament. 10-4 for him. And then if you look at like what are the stacks you want to get to, the Yankees really are at the top of the list for me. And so playing Cole with a 5-man Yankee stack that has Judge, Rizzo, Stanton, pretty tough to do.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, too, though, Ohtani's so cheap that I haven't built lineups yet for the late slate, only for the early slate. I imagine mixing in some of the later bats in the Yankees lineup with Ohtani and Cole is probably viable as a stack and is ultimately probably going to be really popular. We'll see once I build lineups later, but I think Cole should be the most popular pitcher on the slate. And you know, early in the year, I was super pessimistic about Garrett Cole, but he's having one of the best years of his career now because, like you said, the stuff about the sticky substance, I just don't think that's an issue anymore. He's found a workaround towards it, and his numbers are pretty much the same as they've been in previous years. 31.5% K rate, 5.8% walk rate. I have no interest in the Twins as an offense. I think Cole's under-owned at 42% over on DK on FanDuel. I think he warrants being higher than 22% owned, so I like Cole a whole bunch.
Maximilian Kepler will be the only bat that I probably have from the Minnesota side. It was just fun to say like that. I've never said it before, and I promise I never will again. But the Yankees are the talking point for the offenses in this one. Why? Well, I don't know. Aaron Judge seems pretty good at baseball. Giancarlo Stanton seems like he hits him pretty far. Joey Gallo can kind of be added into the fray. The guy's batting ninth. You don't get 9 hitters who hit the ball like he does unless it's Jackie Bradley circa 2017. You real DFSers know what I'm talking about. How do you feel about the Yankees offense in this spot?
Yeah, so I mean, the Yankees have been it was stunning to see them lose yesterday. They never lose games. If you look at the last 10 games on MLB.com where they have the standings, it's like, oh, look, the Yankees are 12-0 in their last 10 games. Like, well, how is that possible? It's because they never lose. They kick everybody's ass pretty much every single night. Dylan Bundy, though, is a pitcher. Also, Dylan Bundy's price, maybe the most off price I've ever seen for a pitcher this year.
That's why I didn't even bring him up.
It is such a ridiculous price for a guy who has not been good for the last couple of years and is in a brutally tough matchup against the Yankees. So there's no need to consider Dylan Bundy, even for leverage purposes. You can't make a case for it. And also, the way that he gives up runs is he gives up a lot of fly balls, a lot of home runs. This is kind of a disaster of a matchup for him against the Yankees. Yeah. It is going to be really difficult to not want to stack up the Yanks in this spot.
Yankees win. Yankees win. Yeah, it's my team, the Twins. They are going to get blasted today. Just prepare thyself. Also, somehow my parents are going to the game again today. So they went to the game 2 days ago. You know what happened? The Yankees put up double-digit runs. You know what's going to happen today? They're going to put up double-digit runs. You know why? Because what happened 2 days ago is going to be what happens today. That's just how it works. Yeah. Welcome to MLB DFS, where upside down, right side up, forwards and backwards, around and around and around. Okay, we're going to move on. Anything else from this game?
No, I mean, we just had AD Poker said the sticky stuff on his backside isn't what you think it is. It is exactly what I think it is. And listen, it's been the old spitball. You rub a little dirt on the ball, a little bit of mud, and you're good to go. Yeah, exactly. You get a little extra spin that way. The ball's a little heavier, harder to hit. It's exactly what we think it is, and it works.
They are who we thought they were. Baltimore, KC, it is what it is. Shout out Greeny. Wonder what he's up to. But 4.7 implied runs for the Orioles, 4.8 for the Royals. And this is a sneaky, well, it shouldn't be sneaky for offense. People should roster these offenses. Against Jordan Lyles, 19.9% K percentage, 5.11 expected ERA. And on the other side, we got Chris Bubich. Not very good either. 9.10 expected ERA seems really bad. How about a over 2 whip? Over 2 whip? Is that real life? That is actually what I'm looking at. That's real life. High offenses. How are you doing? No pitching interest, right?
Bubich is so incredibly bad. Like, it's almost he's made 7 appearances this year and pitched 18 innings. And one of them came out of the bullpen, but either way. So he's made 6 starts. He's averaging like 3 innings per start because he's been so bad. He just can't stay on the mound for longer than that with a 9.33 ERA, 9.1 expected ERA. The Orioles are my favorite stack on the slate relative to price because they're really cheap. And it's also just become, I think the Baltimore Orioles have a slightly better offense than how they're viewed. And it's not to say they have a good offense. I just think the overall way that they're perceived as being a really terrible offense. They have individual hitters, Trey Mancini, Ryan Mountcastle, Cedric Mullins, that are good, but also I just don't think Chris Bubich is capable of getting big league hitters out. So I think this is the best source of value on the slate for offense.
I am probably with you here on the other side. Just look at this. How many times have you ever seen Baltimore second in top stack numbers here at Awesemo.com? They have a 15.9 stack score, which just butchers every other team by a mile. That just speaks to how bad Bubich is. Bad Bubich. Say that 10 times fast. Actually don't, because we don't have time for that crap. But Baltimore, every single bat, top to bottom, rosterable. Rutschman's going to hit eventually, right?
Maybe.
Oh, God, he's been bad. Anyway, talk to me about the Orioles.
They're going up against Bubich, and he's terrible. I don't even know what else.
Yeah,
I mean, just no different than when I was reading off the Bubich numbers from before. He's been the worst pitcher in baseball. He's pitched 18 innings and is worth negative 0.5 wins above replacement. If you were to give him 200 innings at this rate, if he was like a high volume starting pitcher, I mean, you'd be looking at a guy who had by far he'd be a negative 4 win pitcher. It'd be the worst year in baseball history.
All right. Nicky Lopez, 4 kids, and I got to take all of that ass to showbiz. We're not going to roster Nicky Lopez. That's it. 1 through 8, though, you can roster the other guys. Kansas City and things stick out to you?
Not as much as it does with Baltimore. Here's the reason why. Kansas City's more expensive than the Orioles. Chris Bubich is worse than Jordan Lyles, and I also think the Orioles offense might be a little bit better than the Royals. So when it comes to the Royals, once again, it's a good spot for them against Lyles. They are crazy popular. This is the most popular team on the slate tonight by a really wide margin, and that should not be the case. They have one of the larger negative leverage scores I've seen all year, especially for a smaller slate. I just don't understand how the field is rostering them in 20% of lineups.
Denny Green died in 2016. How did I miss that?
I have a feeling I don't think that's
Oh.
accurate.
Somebody just said he died in 2016.
Let's
They are who they thought we thought they were. Come on now. Also,
oh yeah, he did die in 2016.
Yeah, it's a
R.I.P.
bummer. My Vikings. That was my childhood coach. He wasn't good, but I like him as a person. That's a bummer.
Are we gonna do a memorial for him now?
Yeah, 6 years. I haven't had time to process this, but I don't think I do either because we got 2 minutes. Hit the like button, everybody. Hit the subscribe button. Morning show. We got you off to a great start here. Let's round it out. Boston Red Sox, Los Angeles Angels, 3.9 and 4.1 implied runs, respectively. Nick Pivetta, Shohei Ohtani. I want pitching all around in this one. Angels, Joe Adell batting second. You know what that means? More strikeout opportunity. Shohei Ohtani, 8,100. You know what that means? Way too cheap for a guy with his strikeout potential. He's the most popular pitcher on this slate, but I don't know how he can't be at that price. I understand Garrett Cole is both of our priorities in terms of tournaments, but is Shohei Ohtani going to be a guy that you still get to around 50% of like the field?
I love both sides of this because Ohtani's been really underwhelming this year. And it was something you and I had talked about at the start of the year that I thought was a possibility. And I think it kind of gotten taken out of context a little bit where people are like, oh, you think Ohtani sucks? No, I just don't think it never made sense to me that he was the favorite to an MVP entering the season. And I think that we're kind of seeing, I mean, he's still amongst the favorites, but Aaron Judge is now the betting favorite. Ohtani is second. But the reality with Ohtani is he's a really high upside player for both DFS and real life, but he's not consistent. His ERA is around 4. He only has a 119 WRC plus this year. So sure, he could come out, he could strike out 12 hitters today, have a shutout, but he's almost just as likely to get bounced in the second inning because he doesn't have his best stuff today. He's been really inconsistent. So a couple of things here. Number one, I can't stack the Angels offense because when Ohtani pitches, we can't roster him as a hitter. That's problematic. But then when it comes to him as a pitcher, I just don't know what side of him we're going to get. It's the sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit, but to an extreme when it comes to Ohtani. And I think that he's a really high variance pitcher. It makes sense to play both sides of. Also, his recent starts have not been good. Last time out, he pitched 3 innings. He struck out 2 hitters. He gave up 3 homers. The start before, he pitched against the Blue Jays. He struck out 10 hitters, but also allowed 2 homers, gave up 5 earned runs. So he's kind of all over the place right now. There's reason to play him. There's reason to stack against him. So I think this is a good both sides of the game. I'm probably going to come in a little bit underweight to Ohtani, and I'll definitely be overweight to the Red Sox offense, though.
Yeah, if Trout's going to be in, play Mike Trout. How about that for a revelatory statement? But guys, that is the MLB live before lock, I guess. We're at lock of the early slate. We will be back, though. MLB Deeper Dive starting up at 5 p.m. Eastern time. That is Josh and Adam that'll be leading that off. And then Eric and Greg. Oh, I'm Eric. Cool. I'm reading my own name. 6:03 p.m. Eastern time. We'll be doing MLB live before lock, covering these same 5 games. So don't worry, Greg. He'll have all the same takes. You'll just hear them again. Actually, that's not true because he changes his mind all the time. Wishy-washy, Greg. That's how we know him. Greg, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
To your point on that, before I leave, I hated the Celtics earlier in the year, and now I think they're the best team in basketball. But it's okay to adjust to new information.
3.5, baby. What a joke of a line. How you like them apples? Boom. Plaster it on the wall. Shout out, Matt Damon. But either way, Tyler Zander, we're out of here. Yeah, 37. I get it. We're leaving. Wait, I don't know what you're saying. It's fine. Hit the like button, subscribe button. We out of here. He's Greg. He's funny. I'm Eric. I try to be. We'll see you guys later.